Welcome to the Hearse Whisperers, where we give you an inside look at life in the slow lane and talk openly about the death care industry. We're here to pull back the curtain on what really goes on behind the scenes in funeral service, from the heartfelt to the humorous, the traditional to the taboo. There's a lot of misunderstanding out there, but the more we talk about death and grief, the more empowered we become. We're glad you found us, so please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when new episodes drop. Welcome back to the Hearse Whisperers. I'm your host, Michele DeBellis, here with my co-host, David Feeney, and we have a special guest today that Dave's going to introduce for us.
Yes, today we are very, very happy to welcome Michael Tozzi, who is the CEO of West Bergen Mental Health Center, located in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And Michael's going to be talking to us today about different concerns there are with grief and other things, other mental health topics.
Absolutely.
So welcome, Michael.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Excellent.
Great.
Well,
As always, we're starting
Yes.
with some, not really news, this is history. This is our history moment.
kind of ancient
Today.
history.
Ancient history.
But very, very topical. Mm-hmm. Yes. Our engineer Marvin loves these. We're going to talk about the Kingsland, New Jersey explosion, which occurred on January 11th, 1917 in Kingsland, just before World War I. And we're also going to talk about Tessie McNamara. And if you're looking at your screen, and if you're not looking at your screen, there's a picture of her headstone. She's buried in St. Joseph Cemetery in East Rutherford, New Jersey, which used to be Kingsland. Kingsland was East Rutherford.
Kingsland was Lyndhurst.
Oh, Lyndhurst. of
Very
course.
close. St. Joseph's Church is in East Rutherford, and she's in Lyndhurst.
Yes.
In
They're
the
always
cemetery.
always quick to correct
Always
me,
quick to
Michael.
correct.
Always
Poor
quick.
Dave does all the
Yes.
work, and
And
then
he
we
does.
try. But I was thinking people might be thinking, "Where's Kingsland?" But
Yeah.
yes, it's Lyndhurst.
Yep. All I know is on the train to Hoboken, there's a Kingsland stop.
Kingsland. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Well, there's Tessie McNamara's headstone, and I thought we'd start with that today because everything today revolves around her. She worked at the Canadian. In fact, she was the first employee at the Canadian Car and Foundry Munitions Plant located in Kingsland, and it consisted of 40 buildings. And why was it in Kingsland? This company was from Montreal. Kingsland was adjacent to New York Harbor, and they were assembling millions of artillery shells and sending them to Russia and England. So, needless to say, Germany wasn't too happy about this. So, and in 1915, Germany had sunk the Lusitania. So, the popular opinion in the country after the Lusitania sunk turned against the Germans. And so they really didn't like this plant. And they had about 500,000 shells, artillery shells, in the munitions plant. And there's a picture of some of the shells after the explosion. I have my 1976 special effects here. But you can see them. And about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on January 11th, German saboteurs ignited one of the buildings, and 500,000 shells detonated over a 4-hour period. That's 125,000 shells per hour.
That is hard to grasp.
Amazing.
Hard to
Impossible
grasp.
to grasp.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, you think
Absolutely.
about the finale at the fireworks is probably 100 shells. But this is serious artillery shells
Right.
flying all over the place for 4 hours. Needless to say, Hoboken shut down, the ferry shut down, over 2 miles of railroad track were destroyed. And they all thought it was just what happens when you have gunpowder. And then years later, they discovered the saboteurs. And then Germany was I'm talking about the wrong thing right now. But now we can look at Kingsland number 5. This is the territory shaken by the explosions. You can see it goes from Kingsland, you're looking at the slide, in the middle of the slide, And then there's Yonkers, New York, Richmond Hill in Staten Island, and all these places were severely shaken.
Wow,
by
and
this
in New
detonation.
Brunswick, it's like central Jersey just about. That's really far.
Everybody thought
Yeah.
it was an earthquake. And it went on for 4 hours, like I said. And now we can go to the next picture. This is the house, you can see, and you see it looks like jet trails over the house. Those are artillery shells going off.
Wow.
And this is a photograph, so you can see what just happened for 4 hours. There were people laying on the ground, just shell-shocked, so to speak.
So people probably thought they were being attacked. Like not knowing and not having the communication system to see that this had happened, they probably thought like we're under attack from
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
who knows what. Right. Yeah.
And all they could see out of New Jersey, people in New York, was this massive column of smoke and these artillery shells going all over the place.
Huge.
It was tremendous. Yeah. And but we get back to the headstone of Tessie McNamara, their first employee. She was an operator, and instead of running like a lot of people were, she called on her operator set. She called every one of the 40 buildings and said, her quote was, "Get out or go up." So either whether you're going to be blown up or go to heaven, I don't know which one. But she called every one of them, and then she got up to leave when she was done, and then she fainted, and the fire department carried her out.
Oh, wow.
But because of her, 1,400 people were saved. Not one person died.
Really?
And they all credit her. So
A hero.
a hero.
Yeah,
For sure.
very much.
And
very much.
she's interred, and there's one more piece to this story, but this is the end of Tessie. She is interred in St. Joseph's Cemetery in Lyndhurst. Yes. And she, in her life, she didn't like being a heroine. So she just led a very quiet life. And she passed away in 1971. But in her later years, she spent going to St. Joseph's Church in East Rutherford. And in her later years, she had known a young priest named Father Michael Judge, who was stationed there. And then 44 years later, he was the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. So this really cemented our displeasure with Germany, just because even though they thought it wasn't German sabotage, a lot of people did. So
I wonder what it was like for her and the rest of them. How many employees?
1,400.
1,400. You wonder about sort of the emotional impact of that, right? And what I like to call the sort of nerdy therapist moment. I'm sitting here sort of thinking through, I wonder what that was like, right? I wonder what that was, what their experience was like, whether what we now call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, was part of their world. It's why I looked down actually to see how long she lived. But she clearly had a long...
Yeah, that's sort of amazing to think about the stress that she went through, and she was
Absolutely.
Wow,
And there were sort of
able to
two
recover.
levels, right? There was her stress. Then there's this sort of collective 1,400 people together having this experience. Really interesting. It's very, very interesting.
Yep. And it was, like I said, January, and they said the Hackensack River had frozen solid, and people were running from here across the river. Oh, wow. And there's a Snake Hill, Sugar Hill.
So there's a Snake Hill in kind of like close to the Secaucus area. So
think
that
that's
they
where
were
they all
trying to
ran up.
run across. That
Yeah.
sort of makes sense. Yeah.
Wow.
Our local geographer.
Really?
Yeah. It's my zone. It's my zone.
But
You know, I wanted to add to that St. Joseph Cemetery is just almost directly across the street from the Kingsland Station. So Kingsland Station has now been closed. They have moved over to what they call the Lyndhurst Station. They built a newer, more accessible station. But interesting that she's buried across from probably one of the last things named Kingsland in Lyndhurst. I mean, there's a Kingsland Avenue, but really other than that, everything's changed over. So
It's really
kind of interesting.
Do we know anything else about her? Do we know whether she married, had
no,
kids?
I looked her up. I Googled her. In fact, I Googled her and went to page 2 of Google.
Oh, that's a lot of research. Yeah.
So
Page
I
2.
was hoping
You were scrolling.
but nothing. She apparently she was heralded for a while and just disappeared.
Now, do you think that has something to do with
the trauma.
Yeah, that's what I
Like,
wondered. It's why I was sort of
overwhelming.
wondering what the kind of the path of her life was, whether that had sort of a quote typical, unquote path, particularly for that time. It's interesting. It's really interesting. She clearly worked there a long time, and so was able to go back to work. And they all went back.
I don't know
to
what
work.
happened
I
to the
wonder,
company. I don't
that's
know.
wow. It's a,
Yeah,
also
could you
a lot of
imagine going
buildings.
back?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, we're going to rebuild now.
Right, that's right.
No.
Come on back. You're safe. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, don't worry.
Right?
That'll never happen again.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Very interesting.
And even
It really is.
that morning going to work, she sits down at her desk and she has no idea what's going to happen at 3 o'clock. And she's just probably quiet little Tessie. And all of a sudden she's the hero and just calling people. And what happens to your mind?
Yeah.
Just when she says, I have to call all 40 buildings, I'm sure everybody around her ran.
Sure.
And she just said, nope.
Yeah.
Got to do this.
What was that about her, right?
Yeah.
That she was able to keep those sea legs and focus and do what needed to be done.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but all this happened 6 months after what's called the Black Tom explosion. And you really can't, I had a lot of trouble looking things up about Kingsland, and they would always refer to Black Tom, Black Tom, Black Tom. So anyway, Black Tom was an island, a man-made island, just next to the Statue of Liberty. And a lot of times ships would pull up there, and there was a railroad that went to Black Tom, and the ships would pull up and the railroad would go out and they'd load them up. Or sometimes the ships would just dock there because apparently it cost money to pull into New York Harbor. So they would just tie up the Black Tom and save $25.
Wow.
Right.
But, and so the German espionage, Germany's really upset. They hire, somebody gets a supervisor hired in this one company of Black Tom. And the supervisor hires 3 or 4 German spies. And one of the German spies, they said, was just a very simple guy. And he's the one that did the fuse. But, and then just to go back to last week, when Ginny Sanzo was here, we talked about the shark attacks. They happened July 1st to the 16th, 1916. This was July 30th. And then we said last week about how it was just nothing but headlines about the sharks, and then eventually they would have gotten off the front page. I have a feeling this bumped them off the front page.
I would say
So-
the news cycle was kept on rolling.
Absolutely.
Anyway, the one night, and they didn't have any security around this place. There were no fences, there were no guards. Meanwhile, these trains and barges are full of ammunition they're sending across the world.
Just very trusting,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So on July 30th, at very, very late at night, they ignited this. 2 million pounds of artillery were detonated. Windows 25 miles away blew out. Windows in St. Patrick's Cathedral blew out.
Wow.
And think of all the buildings between St. Patrick's
Right.
and the Hudson River.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this thing's going across the Hudson River, the shock wave, and it was 5.5 on the Richter scale.
That's amazing.
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 And there was one tremendous explosion, and then a little while later, I think at 2 in the morning, there was another explosion that was so big, a piece of shrapnel went to the, they became the Colgate clock. Remember that?
Yep, across the river.
Hit the clock, and it froze at 2:05. It was done. So, and then people in Maryland were calling the police because there was an earthquake. That's how big this was.
Wow, it's amazing.
The Black Tom.
Wow.
So let's see. And not the most important thing, but the most memorable thing was this Black Tom explosion hit the Statue of Liberty, the torch-bearing arm. Oh. Because people that day, July 30th, could have gone up to the arm and walked around the torch. That night, it was structurally damaged. To this day, you still can't go up. They fixed it.
From that.
Yep. In 1985 or 1986, they rededicated the Statue of Liberty. And I remember Ronald Reagan was there, and they did some sort of laser thing across New York Harbor, and the torch lit up. Very primitive, but at the time, cutting edge.
No, at the time I was going to say that was probably like, wow.
How did they get that laser to hit the torch?
That's
Yeah.
right.
But cutting edge, and they were fixing the Statue of Liberty, and they said structurally they didn't like it. They never reopened it. So that's it. And then so that was July 30th. April 6th, 1917, which really isn't that long afterwards, we enter World War I.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the bloom was off the rose, and I believe they caught, again, everybody thought it was just carelessness, but then they figured it out pretty quick. It wasn't carelessness.
Yeah.
So the bloom was off the rose.
Yes.
So that's
Well,
today's
that was
history
great
lesson.
history, Dave.
Yes.
Very good.
Dave,
Very good.
Impressive.
Very
I sort of pride myself on history and enjoying history.
Oh.
Wow. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Right here in our backyard.
Oh, the
Part
local
of our-
stuff is really good, right?
Yeah, very much. Very much.
And then we have one last picture of a little picture of Tessie.
Aw.
There's Tessie.
Rest in peace, Tessie.
Rest in
What a
peace.
hero.
St. Joe's. And in the future, we're going to do Father Judge
Yeah.
because he's at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Totowa.
Yeah.
And that's today's lesson.
All right.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Love it.
All right, so from history to present moment, let's go
Yes.
over to Michael. And why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I work as the CEO at West Bergen Mental Health Care. West Bergen is headquartered in Ridgewood, although we have a large children's center in Ramsey and residential programs throughout the northwest part of the county. We are technically part of the community mental health system. So we employ north of 200 people, and we'll touch north of 3,000 lives this year.
Wow.
So big organization, complicated organization with lots of different pieces that kind of come together. And our core mission is to simply help the emotional lives of our community one step at a time. We do it through a variety of ways and a variety of programs. And probably one of the most important things is that folks pay what they can afford at West Bergen Mental Health Care.
That's amazing.
In this day and age.
That's amazing.
Sliding
Yeah.
scale.
Sliding scale, critical. Mental health treatment is, and I speak as the CEO of a mental health center, too expensive. And so folks really struggle, and we do lots of fundraisers to make that work and get a lot of community support. And there's lots of very, very generous, wonderful people that help that happen.
Yeah, because I could see people very easily making a should I go? I need help. I know I need help, but I can't afford this.
That's
and
right.
then it's sad to think people wouldn't get help for that reason. So
And there's lots of barriers to that. So there's certainly the financial barrier. There's also an emotional barrier.
Okay.
There's the statistic that I dislike the most as a clinician and as a psychotherapist is that folks typically wait somewhere between 6 and 8 years. Hear
years.
the word years from the
Wow.
time they have a diagnosable mental illness to the time they reach out for help. So putting our public health lens on, talk about one other public health issue that if we wait 6 to 8 years, you feel chest pains, please don't wait 6 to 8
Right.
years.
No.
You feel lightheaded, you have blood pressure problems, you have any other sort of physical health issue, please don't wait 6 to 8 years. And we in the mental health community are exactly in that boat.
Yeah.
So there's those barriers. There's an emotional barrier. There's a stigma,
Yes.
although we all work really hard. And I think we've come a long way. The very fact that you all have invited me to be here tells us that it's really okay to talk about.
It's absolutely
True.
okay.
True.
It's
Really okay.
absolutely okay.
But
Actually, we were out of guests. So. No, we weren't. But no, you're right. And the
Tess was
stigma
not
is
available.
tremendous.
Yeah.
I remember learning that if somebody breaks their leg, everybody says, go to the doctor, go to the hospital, get fixed. If somebody's mentally not well, oh, you'll be fine.
Absolutely.
Tough it
You'll be
out.
fine. Tough it out.
It'll get better.
Suck it
All the platitudes that
Very much.
you know. We also hate certain platitudes in the funeral
In your
business,
world?
right?
Uh-huh.
Like, I know. I'll say my most hated one. He's in a better place.
Yeah, got it.
Well, regardless, if you have certain beliefs, why is any place better than with us or with our family, right? So, like certain things like that, or it'll get better. It'll get better. Maybe it won't, or maybe not for a long, long time, or maybe never. So I'm sure you have those type of things like, oh, you'll tough it out. And
Absolutely.
Just terrible advice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact is that the sooner reach out for help, the better.
Right.
Right. So just like anything else in all of our lives, no matter what topic you're talking about, small fires are so much easier to put out than big fires.
Oh, I like that.
Can be put out quickly,
Very
more
nice.
efficiently, easily, both from a macro point of view in terms of the system requiring help, right down to sort of our individual experience. So I guess if I were to leave anyone with anything, it's always, if you even think you should reach out for help, just pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and make a call. And I know that's easier said than done. I can appreciate
Great
that.
advice, though.
Yeah.
And if you really think about it, the longer you don't call, maybe AB is bothering me today, but 6 weeks from now, I have to get through my AB, but CD is now bothering me. And now I have ABCD. And it just gets worse and worse. And by the time they call you, probably some of them need serious help.
That's right. Exactly. And that can be really complicated. And sometimes we're not so accurate about ourselves. So sometimes I'll meet with an individual, and maybe they'll bring their partner or their spouse or their family member in, and I'll do the assessment and talk it through. And then I'll sort of pause for a moment and say, how's Dave really doing? Like, what do you think about how Dave is doing? And you'll have thoughts about his patterns and his thoughts, and he's a little different. He's more withdrawn. He's not the usual. And your information, together with your information, kind of come together and help us understand a picture. It's why we prefer family work. We prefer to work with as many people in the household as we can, because we're all intersected. We're concentric circles. And so to work together is always a better outcome. Actually, all around.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Even the hardest people probably come around after a while, right?
Yeah,
Once
very
they
much.
realize they're doing something. Or,
Yeah, sure.
Interesting.
Sometimes we struggle in our lives, and we may have a family member, a niece, a nephew, a spouse, a child who's not reaching out for help, and we wish they would. Right?
I would love to hear your take on that.
We've all been in that boat, right?
Yeah,
we really
I
have.
think that's a very common thing. And it's probably very frustrating to say, like, and you can't make them do it, right?
That's
We know
right.
we can't make anybody do anything.
right,
So what are your
yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, so your own experience, right, is your own feeling. So frustrated, I appreciate that word, and you certainly brought that forward. Fear, right? I'm worried about this family member. I am scared, right? I have fear attached to that. So what we typically recommend is two things. One is think about yourself and work on yourself.
Okay.
So 90% of the time when I have a conversation with someone about that, I will encourage them, not the family member, to seek therapy and counseling. Because sometimes we work in a system, and sometimes when we reach out for help, that family member sort of sees it up close. They feel it, they see it, they experience it, and something shifts. Something shifts.
So
in
it's
the
like a
system.
lead by example
Yes.
thought.
Very much.
Okay.
Very much. So very much around kids and, adults as well, but typically around teenagers, kids, I very much recommend that. And so then I'll often find out that, oh, well, dad's been going to therapy for a while, or mom's been going to counseling for a while. And the inevitable question I get to is, does Johnny know that? Does your 14-year-old know that? Does your 15-year-old know that? And if he doesn't, what a great opportunity for you to share that, hey, we've all struggled in life. We all have things we need to work on and talk about and think about. And so role modeling can really help. Sometimes if we have kind of a teenage situation and we're, the brakes are on, this is a fine line, admittedly. But I usually say to folks, what would you say to your 15-year-old if the doctor had determined that they have a cardiac issue and they said that they wouldn't go to the cardiologist?
Okay.
I'm not going to the cardiologist.
Right.
90% of the time you would say, oh, yeah, you are.
Right. This is a serious
and we're going on
health
Thursday
condition.
and we're going at 5 o'clock. And
Right.
you can tantrum, you can be upset, you're going.
Right.
And so a little bit of that lens, and it's kind of bringing the mental health and emotional life together up with the physical world. Right? We tend to sort of separate them, and this one's kind of the emotional life off to the side.
Right.
Different, separate. I think the research really shows us now that they're much more ingrained.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I think we all know that intuitively. I think our field, in all honesty, took a long time to kind of come together with physical medicine and respect each other, reinforce each other, cheer each other on.
Right.
It's taken a long time.
Right.
So pushing your kid to come. Sometimes I'll also sort of make a deal with them and say, have he or she agree to come 5 times. Not the rest of your life.
Right.
Not the rest of your senior year in high school. 5 times. And if we can usually get someone to come in 5 times, then it's on us as the therapist to engage.
Right.
Right? It's on us to build a relationship over 5 sessions and not quite convince, but at least invite into the process the 15, 16, or 17-year-olds. Often that can be helpful.
Is it usually just them alone or the whole family's there?
Our preference is everyone at the beginning, but kids need to be heard. Teenagers, young adults want to be heard, and they sometimes need and want to be heard outside the parameters of mom and dad, or whatever that parental is. So, so you walk around West Bergen Mental Health Care, and it's kind of a soft, warmly designed place, and we do that very intentionally. We do that because we know that it isn't easy to come in. We realize that it's a hard place to be. Folks aren't in our halls, just like your halls. Folks are not in our halls for because life is going well. Right. And so,
I was going to say there's a parallel there because I think we try to do the same here at Feeney Funeral Home. We want you to feel warm, invited, a very home-like feeling because it's the hardest thing for our families to step through that front door because that makes it extra real.
Sure.
Obviously, the person many times has already passed and they know that, right? But it's not really real until they're with us.
Yeah.
And they're taking their first steps to what are we going to do now?
Very much, very much.
And I was in a grief course once, and the leader said, how many people get upset when the family's 10 minutes late? All the hands go up. And he says, you don't realize that this is the hardest walk up to your front door they've ever done. This is the hardest thing they've ever done, to knock on the door, ring the bell. And so I used to not get I still don't get as upset as I once did.
Gives you a different perspective of
it really does. Yeah. It really does.
What you're feeling versus what they're feeling.
Yeah. But in that sense, we have that very much shared experience, right? The folks that are coming to see the three of us are coming during a time that's incredibly vulnerable in their life, right? They're as vulnerable as it can be for whatever reason. Death. In our case, it may be grief, it may be loss, it may be depression or anxiety or substance abuse or just challenges at home, whatever that is. So we typically work really hard to have a warm environment. So
you really need it.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. I know I've said to people a lot when they've come in to make an arrangement on maybe their mother who's sick, she's not deceased yet, and they just say, oh, this is so hard sitting here. And I say, well, when we're done, I can almost promise you there's a weight lifted off you.
Yeah.
You're coming in here today and it's so hard, but once it's done, you're going to feel much better. And they always do. Because it is a tremendous weight.
Oh, tremendous.
Because you're acknowledging that something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, very much, very much. The grief research also shows us that as someone has been ill, as opposed to a sudden and unexpected death, as someone has been ill, there is a significant amount of grieving that goes on in the family members prior to the actual death. So that's a different process. It really is a very different process. And I really think that going to make arrangements is yet another step forward in that grieving process and that really the absorption or acceptance, right? Accepting what's going on or what is about to go on. So, really, really important.
Do feel better.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about, people are grieving in all different ways. Everybody's different and unique. What's the difference between people feeling like, well, the grief I'm feeling now, this is normal. I should just accept it. I will move past it. Versus, I think I might need help. Is there a way for people to feel what the difference is?
Yeah, it's a great question and a common one. One that we all kind of struggle with. And in some ways, if we could sort of even take the grief aside for a moment, when we're going through a tough time in life, it's also difficult to tell. When is it that I'm just going through a tough time in my life? I have raised anxiety because work is stressful or a relationship transition or I'm moving or some big transition. What's the difference between high level of stress in life and I need help, right? There's this sort of gray zone. Grief is a little bit different in that there are some overarching concepts that we look at. So one, of course, and you mentioned it, and I appreciate it, everyone does it differently. Everyone does it differently, and it's based on your own individual life, your own style, your own emotional well-being. There are cultural implications here, so different cultural takes on things help to kind of have you move forward. The really important thing, though, is to know that it's not linear.
Okay.
That we're not going to get better each day. It doesn't typically work that way.
Okay.
Typically, you go along and you're feeling not well, And then you start to feel maybe a morning, it's usually in retrospect actually, usually you're having lunch and you think, oh, that morning wasn't so bad. This morning wasn't as bad as it was. And they're having an okay day. So here's the problem though. The next day, the sun will come up at a certain angle and you'll be activated or triggered and you go back 3 steps. And then you panic. Wait a second, I was doing fine yesterday. Why am I not feeling well today? Why am I? So it's this sort of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. Totally, totally normal. In fact, we would expect it. If people are too linearly moving toward feeling better, I get a little anxious. Makes me nervous, to be honest, because it's not typically.
Is it like
not,
a masking or like
be,
a sort of like, I guess masking is the best word, or sort of like.
That's a great word for it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so we have this kind of process of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. There's lots of things that help us along. And actually, Dave and I were talking about this earlier. I'm a gigantic fan of, believe it or not, it's a funny thing to say, your industry.
Oh.
Because.
Why, thank you. Yes.
And I'll tell you why. Okay. Because I think ritual is really important in the process. Going to make the arrangements, part of ritual, right, is really important in the process. Whatever that is for you, whether that's a viewing or a wake or a funeral service or no funeral service and a memorial service 10 days later or 10 months later, whatever works for you is really helpful in kind of maneuvering us forward. And it's not necessarily in maneuvering us forward to feeling better, but it's maneuvering us forward to absorb what's gone on, right, and accept what's gone on, take it in.
Sure.
The most recent research, too, around grief, which I really love, is this kind of change in concept of thinking about grief as a change in relationship to the individual that has passed away. So it is a goodbye, and it's a loss, and it's real, but we still have them in our head, and so we have to kind of redefine what our relationship is to that person.
Okay.
How do we relate to them? We think about them every day. We think about them when I drive by a certain park. I think about them at a certain time of year. There's things that trigger or activate me. That's a different relationship. And actually becoming more comfortable with the fact that you have a relationship with that person that is no longer here has really been a helpful, I think, change to the whole grief community. It's a different way to think about it.
Like sitting with that feeling and not saying like, oh, I'm upset at myself because this triggered me or that.
Correct.
Like to sit with that and say, oh, okay, I am remembering this person.
Exactly.
And it's not a bad thing.
Exactly.
Like it's a good positive.
Yeah, and trying not to go to the I should be feeling better.
Right.
Yes, right.
It's been 9 months. I should be feeling better.
I have to be better.
Correct.
And you probably have people around you at that point. If you're that person who feels, I should be feeling better, inevitably you have the people in your family or at your job or something saying, you should be. Come on, it's been a year, or whatever the case may be, and that's got to be just the worst.
Oh, absolutely,
just the worst.
Absolutely.
We used to do grief groups at the funeral home back in the 90s, and one of the first things we would ask would be who's here for what loss, like somebody's died, and everybody goes yeah, and then you say, well, how about did they die 25 years ago, and a couple of hands go up. And then eventually everybody's in the room's hands go up. But it's usually the person's been dead for a couple of years. And and then we would always say, well, I guess time doesn't heal all wounds. Yeah. Some people it does, but other people
there's that
just
bad
can't.
platitude. Time heals all wounds. Another bad one.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. And then they just have never completed their relationship, we used to say.
Yeah.
So that's exactly
that's
sort of exactly
what I'm
like
saying.
that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. They need to come into a better understanding of what that is.
Yeah. We used to define grief in our groups, and I'm going to paraphrase, that it's reaching out for somebody one last time only to find that they're not there.
Yeah.
And like you said, with the sun coming up, music, you're driving in your car, forget it. Music.
Very much.
Oh, my gosh.
Music. I think we also underestimate, because you mentioned the 1 year mark, the anniversary time is much more complicated than people think. And it has to do with the angle of the sun, the color of the sun, the music. Wow. I had a client who had a significant and traumatic loss in the fall 3 or 4 years ago, and he came in and he was a young guy, and we're working together, and I started to teach a little bit, which is partly what you do in therapy, about anniversary time and just sort of assessing what his experience was like. The death was in November. He paused for a minute and he said, now I know why I hate the sound of crinkling leaves under my shoes.
Wow.
every November, which was right around the time of the death, there was the leaves, the colors, the music, to your point.
Wow.
Anything that either activates us and kind
Sure.
of brings us back to that time.
Yeah.
And I think we don't teach enough about anniversary time. I think that would be a helpful thing to the grief community to be teaching it, because people then feel, as this client did, a tremendous sense of relief. Like, oh, thank God, there's a reason for it.
Now I know.
Now
I know why.
Now I understand it. I'm not crazy. This is a grief reaction.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
I'm back there. I'm emotionally back there.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll bet him discovering that day, that November, he was much better.
Much better.
Yeah.
Much different.
Not better, but different.
Grief is an interesting thing, because in some ways it's coming into an interesting relationship with the pain, dealing with it, sitting with it, and in some kind of strange way making friends with it, right? It's not necessarily going to take me down. The fact that I understand it more now, I feel like you have more control over it, you understand it a bit better, and you can just navigate more effectively. It's a little bit like knowing where the rocks are in the stream. And so you know to veer a little bit to the right. The rocks are still there and the stream is still cold, but we're going to veer down the stream and go a little bit to the left and a little bit to the
Yeah.
right.
It's nice.
Oh, I like that. That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Having said that, if we are getting to a point where life seems to be still difficult, and when I say that, I mean relationships are difficult, it's hard to go to work, it's hard to get up and do our kind of, quote, normal things. After a significant amount of time, usually in my mind it's after 3 or 6 months, if someone is still really, really challenged, I don't think, to our earlier point way back when we started, I don't think there's any downside to making an appointment with someone just to sort of process that and learn a little bit about grief at a deeper level.
Yeah.
And really do some counseling then. So
Yep.
to your earlier question, it really has to do with what's it getting in the way of. So
Okay, so how much of your life is being impacted on a daily basis?
Correct. So your life looks like this now. I would ask you then, what do you want your life to look like? What do you wish? What do you hope for? Well, I want it to be up here. Like, okay, how can we close this gap? If you're kind of stuck here and not able to get up there, then you might need a little bit of help. And help maybe, to Dave's earlier point, it might be a grief group. That may be a very effective and positive way to reach out and hear from it. I'm a big fan of clergy. I think they're great. I think if someone has a deep spiritual connection to whatever their community, because then we can kind of hook into some of those cultural norms as well, and just sort of have that be part of the process. But also counseling and therapy, looking for a licensed person, a little bit challenging. So that's a whole process unto itself.
Yeah.
To find
Yeah,
someone.
absolutely.
I'm sure.
And going back to what you were saying about how you like the ritual, you know, in some previous episodes, we've talked about the importance of celebrating the life, memorializing the life, and this whole thought where we have more people choosing not to do anything sometimes, which we were talking about, came more about during COVID times when we didn't have a choice.
Right.
And getting back to, you know, previous times. So I think it's really interesting what you said about that. Do you find, I would imagine, more issues with grief long term when somebody hasn't gone through a process of having a service or some sort of memorial for the person?
Yes, depending on what their cultural background is and what their belief system is, I would agree that sometimes there's a death that happens and then nothing happens.
Right.
So when I have someone that comes to my office and there has been no process at all, I typically will recommend some kind of ritualistic process. Now, it may not be a whole funeral service.
Right.
It
Right.
may be you're taking your own half a dozen roses to the beach and putting them out in
Right.
the water by yourself or just with 1 or 2 family members.
Right.
It may be something that you do in your home sometime later. I know that in my own life, I had my sister passed away 2 summers ago, and strain, the sibling loss, is an odd one. I will tell you as a therapist, it's a strange one. And we did not do a wake or a service, but she died in July. In September, we did an open house at our home.
Oh.
And it was the intention of the open house was to celebrate life and to sort of, and there was an invitation that went out and said in memory of ... And there were, 100 people in the house over the course of the afternoon. And there was something I know in myself that shifted. After that, there was something that moved. There was something on the chessboard where I moved slightly over here. And I really do think it had to do with ritual and shared experience.
I was going to say shared experience is great because we also talk a lot about when you do gather for that kind of memorial, you hear from people things that you didn't know about your person.
Very much.
I mean,
very
you
much.
have a specific relationship with your loved one, but your loved one's out in the
right,
world and
that's
they
right.
have their relationships with their coworkers, their friends.
Absolutely.
So sometimes you can hear great stories about things that went on or their relationship.
Very
And
much.
Had you not done that, you
Never
maybe
know.
wouldn't have had that opportunity. And that's got to be a
Absolutely.
healing thing to hear about them. And
Very much, very
we
much.
have,
Anything to make it real.
Yeah.
Right? Any of those experiences. And I know, little controversial in your world, I'm a little bit of a fan of flowers, to be honest, and here's why.
we love flowers. We love flowers. Yeah. Although some people are not, but
Right? There's
we
kind of a
love
thing
flowers.
about, right?
Yeah.
It's a popular thing for people to talk about around funeral
in lieu.
services.
Yes.
I don't know.
Flowers.
Feels
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
Yes.
I'm a fan of flowers, either being sent to the house or being part of the process, because again, it makes it real.
Yeah.
So if you've had a significant loss and you're trying to process that, and the doorbell rings and the florist is there and he or she brings something in, there's something about the reality of that, the realness that calls you into a moment of angst, right into a moment of reflection, a moment of pain, but it makes it real. So
it's true.
I'm a fan.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's also something to be said for that moment of seeing the card or who it's from
right,
and saying
exactly.
there is, this person thought about
That's
us.
right.
This person's
Yeah.
sending
That's right.
some care. And whether it's flowers or it could be a meal,
Absolutely.
it could be
a meal
card,
chain,
it could be
sure.
something. But showing that support for somebody is really, really important.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And you're only
Yeah.
getting that thing for a reason.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
And that
reality of it.
Sets it home.
Wow, this must be big enough that they've thought about me.
Yeah.
And also there's the process of, and this isn't so easy for some of us, depending on our own makeups, but how do we let people in? Right? So I'm struggling, I'm in pain,
yeah.
I can handle this.
How do I ask for help?
Cool.
Or how do I ask for
help?
Yeah.
support?
Right, and another way to say how do I ask for help is how do I let people in? And so sometimes literally the florist at the door helps you kind of break that wall down and say like, all right, well, they may not be sitting here at my kitchen table, but they almost forced the hand and then sent the flowers that are now sitting in the kitchen, and I'm sitting with those thoughts and feelings and letting that person in a different way.
Sure. And those flowers will start a conversation too.
Absolutely.
If the family is sitting around the
Correct.
table.
Oh, wow. Who
it's
sent
from-
these?
Oh,
Yeah.
Mike. Mike was a great guy. Oh.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that made me think of another thing I've been reading about a lot is grieving people saying how they enjoy hearing their person's name.
Oh, wow.
So I think this would maybe be more after a service or maybe after time is gone, but an anniversary is coming up of their death or a birthday or something, and people tiptoe. Right, like the family tiptoes, and they don't want to bring it up because, I know tomorrow is the anniversary, but I better not mention it.
They won't be thinking about it at all.
Yeah, right.
Right, yeah.
Or in
and
the
if
weeks.
I say it, it's going to remind them.
Yeah, like in the
Yeah.
weeks
Right,
leading up.
right.
You know, in your story about the person who hated November, I'm sure that started in late October. You know,
Very
even if
much.
it was, it
Very
leads
much.
up. But many people are saying, and actually I've been reading a lot about this specifically for parents who have lost a child. They want you to say that child's name. They didn't forget who they are. They never will.
right.
And they don't want you to either. So
Right.
if you say, hey, this reminds me of little Bobby. Like, I
Yes,
loved when he
yes.
did this or that. Like, they are not going to be more upset for you doing that.
That's right. No.
But
That's
I think
right.
as a collective society, we think we're upsetting people when
It's
we do
hard.
that.
It's
Yeah.
hard to, and I appreciate your entire industry, by the way, because in some ways your industry is built on having difficult conversations. Right? I mean, it really is. It's built on sitting with someone that's in a very difficult place and continuing that conversation. And so, to your point, I think that the name, bringing it forward, anniversaries, all have us not feel alone either. Because otherwise, to your point, they are really thinking about it.
They're
But
always
they think the whole
thinking
world is not, and
Yeah.
maybe a lot of the world is not. But if you pause for a moment and tell me that they are,
Yes.
then that's wow, what a moment.
And I was given a talk or a speech, I guess, at the Veterans Day at Van Ness Square in Ridgewood. Once again, they ran out of speakers.
Oh, come on, Xavier.
So, but the whole gist of my speech was to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, I said, please don't look at the parents and say, hey, what about those Mets? Because they might talk to you about the Mets, but every 2 seconds they're thinking about their son. And I said, just talk about them, like you just said. Mention their name, talk about them. And then after I was done, one of the parents who were there, they came up and they gave me a big hug. And they said, like, you get it.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I get it, but I still might talk
Absolutely.
about the Mets sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you have to be comfortable too.
Yeah, it's a hard thing.
You're gonna open up
is.
that. You're not gonna open up the wound, but maybe they're just gonna start talking about whoever.
Sure.
And that's okay.
I think that's also true at the very early part of the death, too, when it's close.
Yeah.
One of the things we do at West Bergen, in some ways quietly, in some ways too quietly, is we respond absolutely to families that have had a death by suicide. So we will respond. And when I say respond, I mean we will respond to the home within an hour or hours of the notification of death.
Okay.
And so sitting at someone's kitchen table with them in those moments is really an intense moment. It's a beautiful, beautiful moment. I've done it myself many times. And I can think of one that I worked on that I went back to the family's house the next day. And I was outside shooting baskets. It wasn't pretty. Shooting baskets with the son. And a parent had died by suicide. And down the street came some women pushing strollers. There were two of them. And we were in the driveway. And they came over to say what they wanted to say to the young man, who was fairly young, in the driveway. And when I introduced myself and said what I was doing there, they asked me to come over. So I step over. And they said, we know that he died by suicide. We don't know what to do. We don't know whether we should ring the doorbell, not ring the doorbell, call, not call. And I get it. There's sometimes some types of death are hard to approach.
Sure.
Yes.
And so I said to them, if this gentleman had died yesterday of a heart attack or a car accident, what would you do? And they said, we'd bring over Big CD and a cake, and they spread the word in that community and in that neighborhood. And within 2 hours, it was what I was hoping for, which was a house full of people that was a little annoyingly loud with a lot of support and a lot of food and ritual. Again, that's sort of making it real. But there's some types of death, I think, that are hard to approach.
Yeah.
Yes.
That are hard to sort of step into and not knowing how to do that and how to do that well.
And I think perhaps you could share some of what people can say, right? So we know that it's not helpful if we are on the outside and we want to support the family and we're already uncomfortable because we don't know what to say and we're sorry. Of course, we're going to say we're sorry, or, what can we say? Because we don't want to say, time heal all wounds.
Yeah.
He's in a better place.
Another,
He was a
can I throw in one of my favorites?
Yes, please.
Another, everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason.
God has a
Yes. Yeah.
Or absolutely the worst one too, another really bad one. If someone loses a young child, like a baby or a toddler, you always can have more.
Oh, yeah.
That's the worst.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's just totally inappropriate. But people don't know what to say.
That's right.
So they're
That's right.
trying to put a little Band-Aid on it, right? They're trying to say something to make you feel better. So
don't
do
feel
you
bad.
have any phrases that can help people in that situation?
Yeah. Sometimes when we're feeling awkward like that, just calling it out is probably the most authentic and real thing to do. So to say, I'm really sorry, I don't even know what to say to you. Right? So, because that's what you're authentically feeling. Right?
Yep.
That's the bubble over your head. It's how you are. It's the space that you're in. And so if I said that to you in that moment and it was real and authentic, you would usually chime in because you're not trying to make me feel better. It's not going to happen.
No.
You're not trying to help me explain it. Not going to happen. So literally saying, I'm really, really, really sorry.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. I usually also go with, how can I be helpful to you?
I like
Is
that.
there something
have
I
to
can
mean
do?
that.
What can I do?
You
And
really
you
do.
would mean it, but
Yes. You're
And-
right. You're right.
I like that a lot because you're not saying the classic, let me know if you need anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
What can I do to help
That's right.
you?
Absolutely.
You're giving them
Yeah.
like a specific,
That's right. Absolutely.
you need an answer. You
That's
want an
right.
answer.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's a particularly worded question.
Yeah.
I just have to do a sidebar. I think the best example of that, and I don't know if even you like the show, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh,
Sure,
that's the
sure.
best. I know. Go
Yes.
ahead. Yeah.
He says, anything I can do, because the person's father died. He said, anything I can do for you, Larry says.
Yeah.
And the guy says, oh, actually, you can do something. Go visit my mother once a week for the next 3 months. And Larry David says, no.
Yeah.
He said, you just asked me that. And it's like Abbott and Costello at that point, and that's the whole episode.
Yeah,
But
he's basically like,
I just
no.
really mean it.
you see that. And as a funeral director, you say, oh, how many times have we heard that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Very much. Very much.
Yeah.
In fact, we always
absolutely.
learned that was something never to say,
Yes.
unless you mean it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to. There are other things you can do around that. So if you do have a family member, a friend that's been struggling, so I would even typically reach out once a month, something like that, just via text
How you
or via
doing?
phone. How are you?
Yeah.
Just checking in. I like that one too.
Just checking in.
Just
That's
checking
good.
in wide, right? Very wide net. It could mean anything.
Yeah.
You can accept it and take that in any way that you want. But being able to do that in kind of a semi-regular way. I don't mean a lot, but I mean once a month, checking in. How we
Yeah.
doing?
And if
Anything
you're
I can be helpful with.
Yeah, and if you're close enough to the person where you feel comfortable, I think maybe just doing a task or taking on an item
Very much.
and just saying, I'm going to the grocery
That's
store
right.
now. I will be back with what you need, or something like that. There's like a little bit of a parallel. A lot of times when someone's a new mom, right? Everyone wants to come over and hold the baby, right? And like visit you, but nobody like does any of the stuff you need, right? So there's this whole movement to like, hey, when you go there, put a load of laundry in, bring some food.
Very much.
Really?
Because
I thought
everyone's
moms did everything.
Oh, well, they do. As a mom, they do.
What I
I'm
heard.
stunned.
Yeah.
I am stunned.
It's kind of like the person who, they mean well. They really
Right.
mean well, but they're not really helping.
Yes.
Right.
So it's kind of the same as a person being like, well, I'll do something for you.
That's right. Absolutely.
Are these the same people that would come over to visit you and have you make them coffee?
Yes.
Just wanted to get that straight.
And
Yeah.
it might coincidentally
And have
be a
a
mealtime.
sandwich.
Yeah. Right. They come in, they're getting all the glory, like, oh. And, but my point was close people. Now, of course, you don't expect
Sure.
Yeah.
a neighbor from
Right.
3 streets down.
Right.
But even in like the close family, I think people, and then it goes back to being afraid or feeling burdensome to ask for help. So an offer of help that you solidly can do
Yes.
is really helpful,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it's on us that are in the grieving community, and at some point we all will be, to also let that in a little bit, right? To sort of let that in, let that seep in, and maybe even take a risk and take a chance and throw something out. Can you do the lawn?
It's hard to
Can you-
ask.
it
It's
is,
hard to
it
ask for
is.
help.
Because that
Well, now,
means you're not in
particularly-
control.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. Particularly in American culture, where we're very individualistic, right?
Yeah.
We're
Right.
We pride ourselves on our autonomy. To your
Yep.
point, our strength, and so very hard
yeah.
to sort of let others in.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not culturally well trained for that.
No. I know one thing after my mother died, it was somebody, it was either a rabbi or somebody in the Jewish faith said to me, just wait on the 1-year anniversary, you're going to say, I made it. And sure enough, in May, I'm standing there and I thought, oh, it was 1 year ago today. I thought, I made it. You made it through every birthday, every anniversary, her death, her birthday,
Sure.
every holiday. And it never made you feel like so much better, but you knew that there was nothing that the world could throw at you that you couldn't handle.
That's
Christmas, Easter, all those things.
Yeah.
You made it.
That's a really, really well put. Very well put.
And I thought of
Yeah.
him, whoever, I can't think of who it was. But
I know for when my mom passed away, and it was years ago, and she was in her 80s, had a good long life. I took the 1-year day off.
Smart.
Just to sort of didn't even do much other than to sort of take the day off to acknowledge and make it real again, right? To let that absorb. And then I still will take at least part of the day off on November 3rd.
Really?
Because that's just sort of part of a ritual for me. It's a way that I can connect with her, a way that I can remember some things. And it has, my relationship to that day has changed over time. But I actually now sort of strangely look forward to that day.
Yeah.
And look
Yeah.
forward to that kind of connection with her.
you get,
Oh, I love that
to
idea.
get pictures out and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually order carrot cake among my siblings. We do that because that was
Oh,
our favorite.
how sweet. I
Things
love
like
that. Yeah, very smart to like proactively
Exactly.
think about it
Exactly.
and prepare.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. All right. So, any parting things you want to tell our community? I mean, you've covered so much. Thank you. This was
And so well.
so well, so
I appreciate
informative.
that. Well, you all make it very easy. I'll say that. Yes.
Thank you.
I really do feel like I'm sitting at your kitchen table. So
Oh,
thank
thank you.
Thank you for that process.
We'll have you back.
Thank you. Yes.
We will.
I will look forward to that. I think if there's one thing that I can sort of leave with, 2 things. One is that every thought and feeling and every reaction is really okay. So grieving, anger, fear, happiness even, good days, bad days, up days, down days, everything. And think about how often you don't hear this in life. What circumstances in life do I say to you, anything is okay?
Right.
Yeah.
When it comes to the grieving experience, everyone is different, and so everything is okay. And I think the other thing is if there's a little part of you that has a tug at your stomach when you hear this conversation and think you might benefit from reaching out for help, reach out for help. Even just sometimes it can be, to our earlier point, 5 sessions, 4 sessions, 9 sessions. I think some people that have never been in therapy before have a little bit of a fear that it's going to be the rest of my life. And it's really not. It does not need to be that.
Okay.
You can work on your grief. You can work on your relationship to that person and then move on in life. And so reach out for help. Small fires are much, much easier to put out than big fires.
Oh, very nice.
Perfect ending. Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you for watching the Hearse Whisperers. Please like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we will see you next time.